Hello and welcome to Everyone's an Expert. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. Uh, it's been a pretty crazy week with the infrastructure bill passing the Senate, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that and kind of, you know, how we as Americans view ourselves and where we want to be in 10 years. This kind of piggybacks off the conversation last week of the president hosting some automakers and making that push to go half electric or fuel cell or hybrid by 2030. So wanted to talk a little bit, not too much more about that, but more about kind of this infrastructure bill that's moving forward, and then some other things, some of the highlights from the Everyday Astronaut, Tim Dodd's fantastic three-part series of conversation with Elon Musk at Starbase, and some of the things I took away from that I thought were really interesting. And then a positive spin on the everyone's an expert thing. I know I kind of always harp on the people who are, in the Facebook comments saying, "Whoa, what about this? What about that?" But I want to focus on a positive side of that this week. So a handful of things, and then whatever you guys want to talk about in the chat, we can talk about too. The Hi guys, hi John, Todd, and Tim. Welcome. Thanks for joining in. I didn't talk about how much we spent on the trip for food or hotels. I might have to do another supplemental episode on that because people were curious about the hotels and how they were and stuff like that. And I realized that after I had just uploaded that final episode that I meant to cover that in there too. Just do a quick rundown where we stayed each night, and then what the how the accommodations were. Most places were Best Westerns, and for the most part they were in really good condition, with a couple duds and not great experiences, but we survived. It wasn't a big deal. But if I were a person traveling alone, or definitely a woman traveling alone, I might not feel as safe in a couple of the spots. But for the most part, we were fine, didn't have any issues. And on a trip like this, we're spending so little time in hotels that it doesn't matter too much. We just kind of check in, sleep, get up, and move on in the morning. So you're not there too long. As long as the door locks and you can get some sleep, that's all that really matters. Excuse me. So the Senate passed the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is great. There's a lot of money in there for EV infrastructure and charging networks, and that might, because of the wording in there, that might be part of the reason why Tesla's deciding to open up their network to get in on that, which is great. They do charging infrastructure better than anyone else so far. So if they can continue to build out the network and add stations and let other people use it and get more money to make that grow, then that's all good. There's some concern that some people or groups are going to be using this as an excuse to just do some crappy level 2s and get it paid for. Not that level 2 is crappy. I love level 2, but people will get this money and then just install level 2s as a way to get the money, rather than really think through the process of where the best places in city excuse me, the best places in cities or properties would be. People get upset about like Hy-Vee's got their chargers near the door in most places, and people get upset about that. Why do EV owners get preferred treatment? And they don't think about, well, the property owners had to run electricity out to those, and it's probably cheaper to run it from the building. So the shortest run you can make that is probably the best decision for the company. So, there's all sorts of considerations. I do have a friend who's a city official in Chaska, Minnesota, and I might talk to him about, how they're thinking, or if they're even thinking about charging infrastructure in the city, and what their plans are, if they have any. Might be a good conversation. But that's great. The money is there. It sounds like the incentive stuff is going to be in this other, probably Democrat only reconciliation bill, and that would be I think it's $7,500 for buying an EV, another $2,500 for buying a U.S. made EV, and then another $2,500 if it's union made. At least that's the way it's written right now. We'll see how that goes. But both of those have to get through the House, and then I think if there are significant changes, they might have to go back through the Senate. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it feels good that we're getting stuff done, and we're actually making some progress, but we aren't quite there yet. So it'll be interesting to watch in the next few weeks, how that whole thing's going to shake out. But interestingly, as I was looking at that kind of stuff today, the Senate also passed today a resolution. I think it's a non-binding resolution, so is it even a thing, on the current tax incentive. I believe it applies to this one, because the people were talking about how, well, this whole thing's going to get rewritten by the end of the year anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But the proposal, I think it was from an Alaskan senator, that got approved, was putting a $40,000 limit on the vehicle cost to qualify for an incentive, which obviously leaves out most Teslas, most EVs, frankly, and a $100,000 income limit for families. And I get that, there's a hesitation to want to give tax breaks to people who are making a lot of money. But $100,000 is a ton of money, don't get me wrong. But it's not what it would have been in the 80s, when I think some of these senators are thinking we're living in the 80s sometimes. So a perfect example is, well, I'll get to that in a second, but it's measures like this that kind of take all the wind out of the sails of these progress announcements of, we want, all cars to be manufactured EV or hybrid or fuel cell by 2030. And, we're going to build out this charging infrastructure, but we're going to cut the knees out from the incentive. And it's this kind of poison pill mentality of, if one side or, one perceived side gets something, we have to do something to make it untenable and not actually be able to not actually give the incentive that other thing, put forward. And this brings me to a perfect example. I have a friend who, I may have talked about him on here before, was considering getting a Mach-E a couple weeks ago. And I said, well, that's great. Let me see how people in the Minnesota EV Owners Club like it, and my only concern is that you might have a little trouble with fast charging, but it's totally doable. It's a great car. People seem to love it. The people who responded to me in the Minnesota EV Owners Group said they loved it and hadn't done a lot of trips with it yet, but so far we're really liking the car. So all good vibes. And Tesla's not going to be right for everyone, so like I didn't push that. I didn't, they were like, yeah, we looked at the Model Y, but it's too expensive. Okay, whatever, you're an adult, you can do what you want. Tesla can't make all the EVs in the world. So they were going to get the Mach-E, and then I was going to send them some more information, some of Tom Malogny's stuff from Inside EVs and his channel, which is State of Charge with Tom Malogny, where he's done a lot of testing and charging with the Mach-E. I was considering sending some of the Kyle Connor stuff, but Kyle's early road trips with the Mach-E, he ran into a lot of problems, but most of those seem to be ironed out now. So I was like, I don't know if I want to send that or not, but was considering that. And then there's another channel I watch called the Mach-E Vlog, and I've had a couple interactions with them in their comment section and on Twitter, and they seem like really nice people, and they just, like I do road trips and stuff about their ownership experience about with the Mustang Mach-E, and they love it, but also admit it's not flawless, and so they talk about the good and the bad, or what works and doesn't, and share their experience. And so I was all excited to send this guy, high school friend of mine, grade school friend of mine, all this information, and I was basically just sending him a message like, hey, I'm going to spam you with a bunch of stuff. Just ignore it if you've already seen it, or, this might be helpful for you. And so I started typing this up, and then he responds, well, we decided not to go with the Mach-E because it's too expensive, and the charging network, we're still concerned about the charging network for CCS in Minnesota. And I couldn't really argue, if somebody says something's too expensive for them, that's, you have to take them at their word that they know their budget better than you do. But, I think they do fairly well in life and their work lives. So they probably are, I would guess, near or over this $100,000 limit, household limit. But they have other expenses. They have a nice house, not opulent, but a nice house in a metro area, suburb area, and they have kids, and they have a lot going on. So, your expenses are a lot, and so for them especially, having a $40,000 limit. That takes out the Mach-E. As far as I know, I don't think there's any version of the Mach-E that's less than that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then, they wouldn't get it on the basis of the income limit either. So you take this incentive for people who are trying to, go electric, and you're basically cutting the knees out from under it and making it unworkable for them. So that's, really pretty frustrating. But like I said, that's, I think, non-binding, and also applies to the current rule, which will probably be written by the end of the year. So if taxes, happen at the end of, or, the beginning of next year, I don't think it's really going to make a difference, but still, it's just that kind of, we got to push things a little back. We can't have nice things. We got to always kind of put some we got to pee in the soup a little bit just to make it sour, which is frustrating. And I know that's not a one side or the other. I know people play that game, and it's just frustrating to me. Maybe some people like it. If you do, I'd love to know why. But anyway, it sounds like if everything can pass, we would end up having lots of money for EV infrastructure, which hopefully that would really kick off people rolling on that. I wonder if some of the slow rollout from some of these charging companies is because they were waiting to see what would happen, and if they could get some of their plans covered by the government. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets dispersed and who's in charge of that dispersal of funds. So the new incentives that could come, it's talking about like it would be cash on the hood, where it's a point of sale incentive, which would be great because a lot of people, couldn't wait to file their taxes, and if you're spending that much money, you need that incentive now when you're buying it, not at the end. Again, people over $100,000 probably can get, wait that long and probably would have that tax liability. But someone who's just barely getting by or has a lot of expenses, might not have that possibility. So all that stuff's got to get through the House and then the reconciliation, and however that's going to, some sort of legislative magic to maybe make that happen. But it was great that it was bipartisan, the main infrastructure deal. I was driving around Montana, which is a pretty red state, South Dakota, North Dakota, and some of the other, really all the states I went through. The roads are terrible in all states. There are chunks in Minnesota here that are just awful. In Montana, what I'm sure is a very red part of Montana, the main business road in town was nice, and the rest was like a gravel road would have been better. It would have been in better shape than the pothole, cracked, distorted mess we were driving over. So, it's good that both sides came together. This is going to affect the whole country, and hopefully repair bridges, repair roads, and hopefully make a good investment toward doing that, if it's spent well, of course. And there's the talk of, China's doing this or Europe's doing this, and China especially, they just spend money on infrastructure like crazy. And from what I've heard and seen in videos, their interstates are, or whatever they call them, inner districts or inner whatever, the main highways. A lot of them are new and look great. Who knows how well built they are, but for right now they look great, and they're building at a pretty fast pace, spending on infrastructure, spending a lot on charging infrastructure too. And so it would be good if we didn't slip further behind in having decent roads places. But if someone's been there and knows different, I'd be happy to learn. I'm not an expert on China by any means. Interestingly, the today my mother-in-law was over, and she was even talking about the EV infrastructure that was going to be in that bill. And so we had a good talk about they don't own an EV yet, might be a while for them, but she's very receptive and like open to the ideas and the um, something for them maybe in the future. But it was cool to see someone who doesn't follow the EV space at all understood that part of this deal included EV infrastructure and what that could mean. So we had a really good conversation about that. Um, and I guess I'll kind of dovetail that into. I will check the comments here in a minute, but um, I'll kind of dovetail that into my mother-in-law's perspective, and then my niece is about to leave for college, so we had a little family party for her on Sunday. And my niece had never driven the Model Y, and my nephew just got his permit, so I let him drive too. And we survived, no problems. They're pretty good drivers. My nephew's still at that super cautious stage, which is good because we were in St. Paul, which can get a little hairy traffic wise. And my niece has a little more of a lead foot, so since she's already got her license, she was a little more comfortable putting it down a little bit on an open road, and that was fun. She didn't go all the way down, and it wasn't scary or anything, but they were having fun and they were excited about it. So that was pretty cool. Like that younger generation just gets it, and weren't really bothered by the screen being over on the side. But so there's a lot of awareness, especially in that age coming up, that they know about it and they think it's cool. So, excuse me. So kind of dovetailing into that kind of infrastructure deal and things. Part of the I'm going to go a little on the negative side of the everyone's an expert thing, but the kind of a common theme I see on comments and for some of the people I know on Facebook, more on Facebook than Twitter, but there's kind of a common thread of an EV post or like a Inside EVs, Teslarati, something like that gets posted. And, the comments fill up with, very positives and big negatives. But a common theme is we can't do it. And to me, this is such a un-American concept that either the problem's too big or it's not going to work anyway, or it's all a hoax. It doesn't really work. It's not going to work for me. It won't work in this situation. There's people who I would say claim to be extremely patriotic, and I'm not doubting their patriotism exactly, but what some of the comments come across as, we can't do it. We're not good enough. Basically, we're not good enough or smart enough to get off fossil fuels. There's no way. There's nothing better. We can't imagine a way that's better. And I just find that so sad. because what they're basically saying in my eyes is we've peaked, and nothing will ever be better than the way it is right now or the way it was when I grew up. And if if we don't have gas burning vehicles, then do we even have a country anymore? And it just seems so backward, where like when we were kids, when I was a kid many years ago now, the kind of the hype as computers were coming along, and then video game systems, and some of the sci-fi we were watching is like, we're on the, all right, we got computers now in our houses. Can you even believe that? And by the time we're adults, we're gonna have the flying cars. We're gonna have like of course we won't be burning gas. We're gonna be on like nuclear cars or whatever. And I think it's really odd that kids who I assume had some of these big dream ideas of what the future would be like are now growing up and going, yeah, there's nothing better than gas. There's nothing better than my Chevy Silverado, and it's gonna be the best thing forever. And it seems like such a soul crushing mediocrity that I just find so disheartening when I hear comments like that. Like, and it kind of goes back to the China Europe thing. Is like they don't have, at least outwardly, don't have that opinion about new technologies. They're like, hey, will this make our lives better? Cool, let's do it. Let's embrace these new things, try to advance it. Not everything's going to work, but make these big strides. And just like once we pick a direction, let's go there. And I feel like and even with the president's announcement last week and the wishy-washy commitment from the automakers, it's a little light on urgency and actually tackling the problem. When you saw, the Tesla killers were coming in 2014, 2016, 2018, 2020, and there are now coming out. There are a handful of good EVs coming out from other companies, but it's not like earth-shattering quantities that are being sold, and it's not. It's definitely not a threat to Tesla at this point. So, it just kind of seems like the kick the can down the road, and we'll make a big promise for 2030, and may or may not hit it. I seriously think the turnover on ICE vehicles is going to happen way faster than the industry expects. I saw Sandy Munro had a video out, and he was talking about his prediction was 2030. He's kind of moving that up to 2028 as kind of the tipping point of where the majority of sales will be EV. And that might be the tipping point from a sales number year. But I think by that point, almost everybody is going to be thinking, well, my next car will be an EV. I think the more butts in seats, the more people who have a cousin, a brother, sister, whoever, who own one and see that it works for them, and they aren't paying through the nose for gas, and that you can warm it up in your garage while your garage is closed. The more people see that and get used to that, I think there's going to be a pretty fast turnover. As I was talking with my sister, at that mini graduation party. She was showing me their new Volvo SUV. I can't remember what the number is. And, I was saying, oh, have you seen the new Volvo? I think it's XC40 Recharge, might be. And what in the world is that? I can't see if I can read that comment that just came through. Um, anyway, uh, you guys got me good and distracted. Anyway, but my sister was, kind of showing me, like, she went for a drive in the Model Y. It's the first time she'd seen it. She thought it was really nice. She didn't mind the center screen. Thought that was cool. She liked how you had a nice big view of the road. But then she was showing me her new car, and it's a very nice Volvo, car, and kind of a big SUV. She's got teenage kids. She's got to haul around with gear and all that stuff. So Model Y might be a little small for her right now, but I was talking to her about the electric Volvo. She was like, yeah, that's kind of crossover size, so not quite right for us. But, she's someone who I can see, has this newer car now. I think she got it used, but, this newer vehicle. And her next car, although she might not know it yet, her next car will probably be electric. Because the idea is becoming more comfortable. She's driven ours. I think she drove the Model S too. So, as prices of EVs come down and they become more ubiquitous, I think it's going to accelerate a lot faster. But I don't think that's necessarily going to come from government. But we'll see. The incentives are good. Hopefully, the big worry people have is, where do you charge it? If we can build out that infrastructure and make it so easy, and lots of plug-and charge vehicles, I think we can make great strides in the next 6 or 7 years. So we'll see. We'll see how things ramp up. The comment that came in that shocked me a little bit. I will get to the rest of them, but yeah, yes. The 5 count asked if I can take my shirt off. I thought that's what I saw out of the corner of my eye. No, I can't, because I don't want to blind you all. Yeah. Anyway, so it's not coming up in the main chat. I wonder if there's something like, blocking that comment from reaching the public chat, but it's in my window. Anyway, totally off topic. Don't worry, I won't take it off. That's for my OnlyFans, which I do not have. So kind of I want to juxtapose all of that with this kind of half measure hobbling of the things we're doing with Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut's interview, 3-part interview with Elon Musk, which the final piece dropped today. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're just going to have to live with the shirt for today. So this interview was really, really interesting to see how, we've kind of heard Elon talk about different things, but hearing him talk about, kind of the broad space concepts of why we want to get multiplanetary, so we don't end up like the dinosaurs, everything from that kind of stuff to the urgency of it. And you can tell as he's walking around the factory, um, when he's interacting with the SpaceX employees, he's laser focused on the the issue they're talking about, or um, the segment of, they're trying to figure out how they're going to level out the launch table for this massive rocket, tallest rocket that's ever been made. And so the technician starts talking about, we're going to put plates in here, and we've got leveling presses here, and so they're talking through the details of that. And then, a couple minutes later, they're talking about, the pick points for how the crane is going to cranes are going to lift this table. And so he's talking to Tim in the interview sections about pretty detailed rocketry history of engines and all that stuff. And then he's talking to this guy about, weights and levels and all sorts of stuff about, the launch structure. And there's a couple other points where he kind of loses track of what Tim's asking him, because you can tell something caught his attention in, the building they're walking through, and he just zones out because he's thinking about, something that needs to be done, or something that he needs to tell someone about this thing. And the laser focus of, we don't need to solve this in 10 years, we need to solve it now. And working in, I think Tim points out, like, you guys work in a matter of days and not months. And Elon's like, well, really hours. How fast can we get this done? Is, obviously safely. And, they've got people working on that. They talked, somebody came up and was talking about, how they were going to lift this and why they were going to do it a certain way for safety and all that stuff. So, they're not just throwing stuff together without thinking about it, but they're focused on the problems, and what are the problems right in front of us, not what the oil rig launch tower is going to be when they get to that point. It's, let's get this thing flying and then see where we are and what we need to do next. And that stuff, worrying about those problems will come later, but do the immediate steps. So it was really interesting to see, kind of that legacy auto mentality of, we'll get to it when we get to it. And, we don't want to do it at the expense of, an extra buck or two we could make this way or that way. His mind and his companies are, what can we do right now, and can we do it faster? And, putting all that effort into there, which is why I think they're getting into, the mining and everything for the batteries, just because no one is producing stuff at the rate they see it needs to be done. And he's, with Battery Day, I think it was last year or the year before, last year, they laid out what they were going to do and at what scale. And in that, they were talking about what the rest of the industry needs to do. Like, this is what we think we can do, but really the world needs to do this. Basically saying we can't do it alone, and this is the direction everyone should be moving. And now you see some other companies are starting to do battery manufacturing, or starting to talk about doing battery manufacturing and things like that in-house. So, hopefully there's a faster pace than what they're promising. But I think it'll be really hard to match, Elon's just constant drive of, let's solve these problems, let's move on to the next thing. Let's keep progressing and from a Tesla standpoint, transition the world to sustainable energy, And from a SpaceX standpoint, he wants to have a, a base on Mars that's self-sustaining. Um, Again, he was saying, I don't know if that'll happen in my lifetime, but it would be great if it did. Um, to kind of give us a shot if another dinosaur event happen, the uh, asteroid kind of thing happens, or if Yellowstone blows, or whatever. Um, so I just thought those were pretty interesting. On one hand, you've got the speed of government, and the other hand, you've got the speed of Elon's mind and all the things he's trying to do. Basically, get as far as he can before he dies. Move these things forward. It's just a completely different mindset. Um, a great example of that is someone posted something about the new. I'm trying to think of what they're called. They're the spacesuits that they wear when they do extra vehicle, like outside of the vehicle things. And basically, the people who are designing them with or for NASA said there's no way we're going to have them ready by 2025 even. They were supposed to be done in 2024. And so, Elon said, well, we could do those if we had to. And, I'm sure the people at SpaceX went, one more thing. But at the same time, it's like, that seems like a dumb thing to have to wait for. And maybe the progress just isn't. Obviously, it's a hard thing to do. It's a mini spaceship for a human being that has to be flexible and all that stuff. So it's not that it's a hard problem, but it seems like something that, when they had a design a couple of years ago, working hard to make that a reality shouldn't take too many years. And now saying it won't be ready before 2025 seems a little ridiculous. But again, I don't know I'm not an expert. I don't know all that goes into it. But it seems like it's a doable or a fixable problem. I'm going to catch up on the chat. I got a couple other things, but I'll catch up on the chat and get back to you. No more shirtless comments, please. When Tesla opens up the supercharger network, the charging adapter is going to have to be about 15 feet long for CCS. Yeah, there's going to have to be some way to do it where they can get to the charge points. Yeah. Oh, that's a good point about Social Security. If you don't pay taxes, you don't get the tax liability. So an incentive, especially for people who are on Social Security, cash on the hood, a cash incentive would go a lot farther, and a lot further for lower income people. Yeah, EV suits. Thank you, Jason. And hi, by the way. Yeah, I think Elon's spending a lot more time on SpaceX versus Tesla recently, and I wonder if that's because of the. Well, I guess that's what we're seeing because we saw those interviews. But I wonder if that's because, like, obviously not all. You don't have your plaid yet, so not all the bugs are ironed out in Tesla, but they're kind of on a roll where SpaceX is trying to do something completely new. I think even with there's the rumors that the $25,000 car is designed, and the production lines might be starting to be built in China for that, in Texas. If that's the case, they've got people on Tesla staff who understand the casting process, what they're going to need. I'm guessing it's going to have a lot of similarities to the Model 3, only be shrunk a little bit. So I'm guessing there isn't a lot of interior work that needs to be figured out. It'll probably have a different shape and maybe a little different, smaller battery and all that stuff. But I have a feeling they've got good engineers who can solve those problems with the new way they're doing things, with the mega castings, and probably structural battery pack in that too. So I wonder if the engineering challenges aren't as pressing for him in Tesla as they are for SpaceX right now. Yeah, I hope you get it, but I hope part of the reason these are taking long, I'm sure it's there's part supply issues and all that stuff. But I hope when people get their Plaid vehicles that there aren't the panel gap issues or the misalignment issues. I hope definitely at that price point and at this point in Tesla's evolution, all that should be well past these vehicles, and they should hopefully show up just pristine and ready to roll. I'm hoping for you. Yeah, it should be less tech, less engineering on that lower price vehicle, and again, the other vehicles. I would guess Elon will start spending more time with Tesla when Cybertruck production starts, and maybe if semi-truck production is starting at that same time, kind of shifting the focus over to making sure those vehicles are right, because they are completely new architectures. So I feel like he's going to. I wonder if kind of the car stuff isn't as interesting to him anymore, since they do seem to have a pretty good, at least, roadmap of the casting, the structural battery pack, and all that. If it just like you can kind of put that on the back burner. I know if they had a PR department and maybe some other things that would handle some of the stuff that we're getting from him for Tesla right now. But anyway, it'll be cool when those rockets go off, and yeah. Missing 2 caps, brake fluid, and AC. That is not good news. Is that the one that showed up to the event last week? I really wish I could have made that. I wanted to hit that, and then after that I wanted to hit the tail end of the other community event that was going on. But my wife got stuck at work and didn't get home till 7, I want to say. And so I'm there, I've got my EV t-shirt on, and I'm just ready to walk out the door. I'm all ready to go. And she's not showing up. Pretty soon it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll feed my daughter, and we'll see when Mom gets home. And she got home, and she's like, oh, you had a thing tonight? And I'm like, yeah, but, it's tough. So I'm sorry I missed that. It would have been cool to check out the facility and the obviously the Plaid. But, yeah, it's too bad if it was missing caps. Did they get those on at the service center? Hopefully after that was noticed? Or, like, did he drive it away with that? Ooh, yeah. If he was going to race later, that would have been very bad. Ugh. It's so frustrating. There's so much good about Tesla, and I know those are relatively rare occasions. My vehicle was in really good shape when I got it, and it's just so frustrating when you hear some of these kind of boneheaded things. It's like, oh, come on. We should be past this. So, but actually, that brings me to another point that I was going to bring up earlier. Was that also in reading comments and things, people will point out a problem, and especially this happens in a lot of Tesla groups, which is weird. I'm in a Model Y enthusiasts group on Facebook, and I swear it's just the complain about Tesla group. And when people post pictures of like, hey, I got my vehicle, half the comments are, why does everybody need to post this? It's not that bad, but it's just a lot of negativity. And like, on one hand, like this stuff like, oh man, that is a pain in the butt. You can't order a cap, they needed to order a whole assembly. See, like stuff like this is genuinely frustrating, like super frustrating. And I'm sure you just got a Plaid, you want to drive the hell out of it. And so that's bad, especially that you can't just order a cap. But, there's other people, like in this group I'm referencing, that pretend like nothing ever goes wrong with any other kind of vehicle. And like every other car from every other manufacturer is pristine and never needs maintenance or blows a tire or anything. And so it's some of it's, people who hate EVs saying, oh, Tesla's trash, get a gas car. And some of it's, other EV brands saying, well, Tesla's obviously got some issues, but they are not the only one that have ever had problems. And no one likes getting a new car and having problems with it. I had that what I thought was a paint chip, and it was, it really kind of took the wind out of my sails from the delivery, even though it was fine. It was, and they were able to wipe it off. Was nothing, just a little paint or like wax marker they use when they're, in the factory, and didn't get all the way out of the seam. I thought it was a paint chip. They solved it in 15 minutes. But it just kind of took that delivery experience from ecstatic to, oh, I got to deal with something. And that's unfortunate. So I'm sure they were feeling the same way. Oh, he did make it to the track. So did he get a cap fast, or get that new assembly? Yeah, I'm sure it was the fastest one there. Those cars are nuts. I ended up watching way too many Plaid videos for a car I'm never going to own. I have no, like, other than I want to experience it sometime, I don't need that vehicle. But I think it's super incredible. Um, so, yeah, hopefully they can iron that stuff out. But they aren't the only ones who ever have issues. And I think people lose sight of that sometimes. So, but let's go on to something positive. I always talk about everyone's an expert and has these, I can solve the problem better than anyone. Somebody on my Twitter feed responded to, I wanted to share that too. I will in a second. Someone responded to a comment I made on a post about the infrastructure, about like EVs cost way more to charge than my truck, and you can't road trip in them. And I'm like, oh, I just did this 4,582 mile road trip, and it only cost me, 300, something, $325 or something. And like this guy kept coming back to me, and I was like, oh no, it's, you really can do this. Like, he was like saying, oh, that's BS, it'll never work. I'm like, no, I did it. Here's the route. Here's the information. And then he comes back to me with, well, I have a modified something truck that runs on, it's something like no one's like, you can't buy that. You built a specific thing. Like, so saying, well, it can't charge as fast as my car when I have a specialty car that does like a different thing than anyone's going to buy. It's maddening. Like, you just got into that comment thread to talk about your sweet modified car. Like, that's not applicable to people. So that kind of stuff can be super frustrating. But on the other hand, there was I can't remember if it was in the Tesla group or the Minnesota EV owners group, but someone a day or so ago posted something about, hey, I'm going to do this trip out to, I think, San Diego, go kind of through Colorado and back. Does anybody have any road trip tips? And I just put a little thing in there about, like, oh, I think it was their first like big road trip in a Tesla. And I said, well, like, start out giving yourself a little extra buffer than what it recommends, and kind of see how your driving style is, see what you're ending up with, and then, once you're comfortable, then you can kind of taper that back and, get into those lower stated charges without having range anxiety. Somebody helpfully pointed out that the advice I should have given is carry a plug kit and a compressor. So that's true. But I was reading through the rest of the comments this morning, and I was just struck with how helpful everyone was in that thread. And everybody has a different experience. Everybody's got their own expertise. And so, somebody was, talking about a better route planner, which is a good resource. Other people were suggesting, I can't remember all the things, but it was really like helpful, good information. Someone pointed out the mudslides on, I can't remember what interstate it's on, through western Colorado. Make sure you're avoiding them. People were just encouraging and helpful, and it was so great to see that all these people brought their own expertise and experience to be really helpful and put this person on a path to having a great trip. So I just found that super awesome, and the kind of everyone's an expert that I wish we'd see more of. But I know social media is not built for that, but it was cool to see. They took the cap off an X as a donor. Nice. Maplewood does rock. I-70. Thank you, Todd. Yeah. Yeah, people gotta always come at me about the tire issues now. Uh, Hopefully those are the last ones for a while. Knock on wood. Uh, but I did want to share. I put this on Facebook and Twitter, and people seem to be really enjoying it. So I wanted to share this little animation piece I did about the trip, just kind of showing kind of where different things happened and the route we ended up taking, and I have the mileage and the cost there too. So just put this out on for fun, and I was going to put it out on YouTube. I put a version of this in the wrap up video last week, but I added some more fun stuff to it, and it's too short to bother putting up on YouTube as its own thing. But I thought for here and on social media it would be fun. So I'll let this play through. Maybe if I can click on it. There we go.
Fossils, not fossil fuels.
And Ellie comes to join us in playing Glacier. Second flat. Michael sees a bear in the zoo. Ellie flies home.
One well at a time.
Check out the Run Foundation. Yellowstone. Teton. Steamboat Springs. Rocky Mountain National Park. And then the slog through Nebraska. So if anyone wants to keep looking at that, and then so anyway, just wanted to share that since it was a fun little thing, and I don't know if everybody's seen it, but there it is. This week I finally got approval from Destiny from the North Dakota Tesla Owners Group. She looked through the Dinosaur Museum video where I talked to her about the museum, and then we also talk about the process and benefit of adding the level 2 charger in their parking lot. And I wanted to run that video by her because I wanted to make sure I got things correct. And oh, thanks guys. Yeah, I figured actually the idea for that video came from like, I want to put the sound of breaking glass somewhere. And then once I put those cracks in, I'm like, oh, I should put the hotels in, and I should put the other stuff in. And it kind of got out of hand, but I thought it was fun. So thank you. But I wanted to show you this. I may have showed this on another live stream before. Let's see where I can show it where it's not in the... and hopefully it's kind of in focus. This is about 4.5 inches long, and it's a plaster cast of what I thought was a dinosaur claw. Destiny gave this to Joan, and here, let's doing things backwards here. Which way do we go? So I thought this was a tooth and this was a claw. And so I had put that in the video, but I was, telling Destiny, let me know if there are errors in it. And she said, well, actually, those are both teeth. And this is like about 4.5 inches long. This one's about 2.5 inches long. Like this, I'm not holding them really close to the camera so they seem gigantic. This is like next to my face, and that's a tooth. And it just like boggled my mind of how like terrifying that dinosaur would be. When I thought it was a claw, I'm like, yeah, that's impressive. That's what I expect, kind of from Jurassic Park. You expect their claws are going to be about that big, but to have this be these are both teeth. Pretty crazy. So in the feature video I do about the museum, I'm going to set these down so I don't break them. They're plaster. But I have a couple nice, really close-up shots where you can see the texture of them really well in the feature video. So I think I think I'll release that on Sunday. Some people on Twitter asked me about that roadmap video, so I might also do a quick little how did I build that. It's really pretty easy, but people were asking about it, so I said, well, I can throw 2 to 5 minute here's how you do that video together. So I might release both of those over the weekend. But after doing, I put all the videos for the road trip together, and it comes out to 2.5 hours. So basically like a full length movie. You could go see a Marvel movie or watch my road trip. I'm not gonna suggest which one would be more entertaining. I feel like that might be a detrimental thing to do. But that was a pretty big project, and so rather than rushing into something else, I want to get this feature out. And since it was approved this week, I'm thinking that will be Sunday's video, which I still think is very interesting. So, if you have any interest in dinosaurs or level 2 charging and how to, get that in place, she talks through how they did that. So that'll probably be Sunday's video. Like I said, I might throw in a tutorial of how I made that map thing very easy. I did it in Apple Motion. And not to get too in the weeds, but it's kind of like Photoshop, if you've ever used that, where everything's kind of in layers, which is the way my mind works. I learned Photoshop was the first big program I learned. And so thinking that way is just really pretty easy, and then you just add some keyframes and stuff. Super, super simple. So I might do both of those this weekend, kind of back to back. Then I'm working on arranging a interview with Curtis from the Well Done Foundation. We're trying to put together a time where we can get together on Zoom and go through. I got the basics update from Stacy while I was out there, but there were a few things where she's like, "Oh, you're gonna have to ask Curtis. I deal with this stuff. I don't necessarily know that stuff." So trying to touch base with him before I do an additional update for them, and then I'll submit a version for the Now You Know channel to give their audience an update as well. So that's stuff in the works, and then some other tests and stuff, some fun stuff I want to do with the Model Y as well. This Saturday, I'm going to try to go to the Rochester Farmers Market, where they have they invite EVs to come down and people to talk EV stuff with people there. So I've been meaning to do that, and they only have a few more before the summer ends. I think it's like every Saturday morning, and so that's my plan for events for this week is come down there and check that out. If nothing else, I'll get some fresh produce and hopefully talk to some people. And if no one else is there, I'll sit in the car and play games. So I'll bring the game controller down. Todd's going too. Great. Fantastic. Then I'll have someone to talk to. I don't know we'll see how it goes. I might bring cameras down and shoot some of that stuff. But again, I'll maybe throw them in the car and then see if there's enough to turn into a video. But I like doing those events, especially outstate. I know Rochester's not too far outstate, but just giving different audiences a taste of the vehicles. So that means Friday's a car wash. So I'll end up doing that. But a lot more to come. Is there anything you guys want to talk about, or anything in the chat? You're welcome to post it if there's something I missed or something I got wrong. Let me know. I'm just going to double check my notes here. Yeah, I think I'm good as far as what I plan to talk about this week. We'll see. Next week is AI Day on the 19th, and that will be, is that next Thursday or next Friday? Let me pull up the old calendar here. Next Thursday is the 19th. So we won't know anything about AI Day next Wednesday, but we will we'll see. I'll definitely be watching that night, and we'll see what they have in store for us. I'm hoping we get to see some really cool improvements with full self-driving. Actually, this Friday should be a new release. It should be beta 9.2. So hopefully by next Wednesday we'll have seen some new videos of how well that's working. It's great that some of the people I watch are posting videos saying, hey, this is going to be really boring. It didn't really do anything wrong. Or, minimal interventions. So that's great. For the money out for the charging rollout. One thing I want to say about the FSD before I answer that the money question. I was really glad when we had the Tesla event a couple weeks ago, talking to Robert, and he was saying that there are people testing FSD in Minnesota. It sounds like those are all Tesla employees, but I was really glad to know, because it kind of seems like, from what you see publicly, that it's just happening in select areas. And I thought, Minneapolis, St. Paul, there's so many great, there are small town areas where, like, I'd love to test it in my hometown. I'd love to test it other places. So I was really glad to know that, although I'm not testing it, people in Minnesota are, and that hopefully bodes well for, as the snow comes, if it's not in wide rollout by then, that at least someone's testing it in our weather. And hopefully may have been through last winter too. We'll have to see how it behaves. But looking forward to, again, that's something hopefully we'll learn more about on AI Day. Probably not Minnesota specific, but it makes me feel a lot better knowing it's being tested here. Even if I don't know who the people are, getting that data gives me a little more optimism that they're looking into more than just California situations. John got the new software update with the new game. I should see if I'm ready to download something. I didn't check. But congratulations. If you've played the new game, let us know how it is. So how do we think that we're going to divide the money for charging stations? Um, I don't really know, obviously. Again, I'm not an expert. What my guess would be is there will probably be some sort of process like writing a grant or doing some other public kinds of things where you will have to submit a proposal with maybe a request for funds, and then they would decide based on maybe how large of a project it is, how many people it will help, who it will serve, and why. I'm guessing there's going to be some criteria there. And then, the money would be, what you asked for, or probably less. Because I think a lot of people are going to want full funding, but I think there might be a limit to only 80%. I think I read that somewhere, that the government, like, if you have a project that's ready, it will, like, the government will only pay 80%, which is still a huge amount, especially for Tesla, who's been doing it alone this whole time without the Dieselgate money. If they could get 80% of new charging installations installed, or, like, if that cost approved, and if it's through a government program, that's probably going to hopefully streamline the permitting processes as well. We could see superchargers popping up like crazy, which would be incredible. So, yeah, I'm guessing people are going to have to submit a proposal, why they need/deserve the funds. It'll be interesting if it's doled out through, like, company to company, or if it's states get a certain amount, maybe based on population or land mass or something. And then, the states would be some kind of intermediary, which I can't see that going well. Just because there would be such a variety of implementation. And we want fast chargers. We want plenty of level 2 too, but we want fast chargers on the interstates and on the main supporting roads. My lifeline to my hometown is 169, and for a lot of people going up north is 169. There need to be chargers on 169, whether they're Tesla or not. And there are so many roads like that around the country that aren't interstates but are major state highways, and they need attention to give people confidence to travel. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that. I wonder if that'll go through the Department of Energy, or how those funds will be doled out. It's definitely something worth paying attention to. I can do a little research this week and see if I can find a way, or find if there's any information on that. So it'll be interesting. Just saw one more comment come through. Yeah, how are they going to cool the adapter? That's another issue they're going to have to figure out. If it's got a cord, there's going to have to be cooling in the cord that would get power from being plugged in But then there's going to have to be some sort of pump system, so that, I mean, that could get pretty cumbersome once you start. If it's just like the J1772 plug adapter, they might not need cooling, or they might be able to do something with like heat sinks or something built into it that might be able to disperse some of that. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but I assume they've got it figured out, or someone's working on it right now. Because yeah, if you're doing 250 kilowatts into a Porsche Taycan from the supercharger, that's going to heat up. Yeah, I know there's antifreeze running through there. So it's going to be really interesting. It might actually, the easiest solution for Tesla might just be to add a couple CCS plugs like they do in Europe. Add a couple CCS plugs onto, each supercharger. If there's a bank of 8, maybe do 3 of them with CCS. I don't know if they would be able to get funding for the whole install then. Or if they'd have to do it on all 8 to get the funding. There's going to be so many weird little loopholes and caveats. Yeah, it's going to be a crazy year as all this stuff opens up and we see what their plans are. I wonder if we'll learn more at the shareholder meeting, which I would guess will be in late summer or fall, maybe September sometime. I don't know if they've set a date. I don't think they've set a date for that. Everybody's thinking about AI Day. And I don't think it's shareholder meeting and AI Day. I feel like we would have heard about that a week out. We would have heard about that, even though Battery Day was like that. But those are all the hot takes off my mind tonight. But I appreciate you guys joining in and adding to the chat and correcting me and feeding information in here. You guys are the internet experts that I rely on to make this show work. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and I will catch you later. Thanks a lot for joining. Good night. And now we do the dance. I look on the screen that's way over there and try to find the button. There it is. Have a good night. Thanks.